hope the $2,000 helped. That simple sentence hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest, right in the middle of what was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of my life. In the flickering candlelight of the Mercer Room, a renowned Manhattan restaurant, amid laughter and clinking wine glasses, my grandmother, as blunt as ever, looked at me with eyes brimming with love. And then she said those words. "I've been sending $2,000 every month for the past 4 years to your parents, hoping it would ease your burden and let you focus on your studies." I froze. "What do you mean?" My voice sounded foreign to me, like someone else was speaking. I never received a single cent. Hello. My name is Samantha Rivers, but everyone calls me Sam. That day I was 23, fresh out of NYU with a marketing degree in hand. On the outside it was pride, freedom, a new beginning. On the inside, I just wanted to collapse. I was $50,000 in student loan debt. I'd spent 4 years that felt like 40, juggling 3 jobs at once, cleaning houses, bartending, and tutoring online. The so-called independent student life was filled with ramen, the musty smell of a basement apartment, and sleepless nights worrying about rent. Yet my parents chose to host the celebration at a high-end restaurant in Soho, with a 3-digit menu champagne to start, and fresh flowers on every table. When my father Greg raised his glass and said, "To my daughter Sam," the first woman in our family to graduate college, everyone cheered. I smiled, but inside I was shattering. I remember sitting to the left of Ryan, my 19-year-old brother who was studying at Brown. He occasionally looked up from his phone, nodding at the toasts. I always thought Ryan was smarter, better at managing money than me. Later, I'd learned that was only part of the truth. I also remember the expensive watch on my father's wrist, and the brand-new Coach bag my mother carried, things they'd told me they couldn't afford in these times. Something wasn't adding up, until Grandma Mildred arrived. She was always late, always bringing what she called the foundation of love. She was the only one who called me every week, sent handwritten postcards, cookies, dried flowers, and old economics magazines she'd read and passed on to me. When she arrived, the room seemed to brighten. She kissed my forehead, handed me a gift, and sat beside me with eyes full of love. Then she said those words. That's when everything fell apart. "You didn't get any of it." Her face flushed as she looked at Greg and Janet. I was too shocked to gauge their reactions. My mother's hand trembled around her wine glass. My father began rearranging the cutlery on the table. "There must be some mistake," my father stammered. Grandma Mildred started to shake. "Greg, I sent $2,000 every month to your account for 4 years. What do you mean Sam didn't get it?" Ryan hesitated. "Wait, I've been getting $1,000 a month for living expenses. I thought it was from my school or a scholarship." That's when it all exploded. I felt betrayed, belittled, exploited. I stood up, and that's when my life changed. If anyone had asked me, "When was the first time you doubted your parents?" I would have said never. I grew up believing truth was the default in our family. That love came with honesty, and parents always chose what was best for their children. But that night after the graduation dinner, I began seeing old memories in a completely different light. I got back to my familiar basement apartment after 11 p.m. The dim yellow hallway light flickered like my heart, exhausted, confused, and unsure what to believe anymore. When the door closed behind me, I slumped onto the cold wooden floor and cried. But then the tears dried up, replaced by something colder I needed to understand. Understand why I'd lived so miserably, while my family, it seemed, had not. I started flipping through the chapters of my memory. My first year at NYU, I was naive and hopeful. I remember buying textbooks for the semester, the bill totaling $462. I called my mom. "I need a little help, just about $200. I'll cover the rest with my part-time job." She paused. "Sam, this month your dad lost a big commission. The mortgage went up. You need to learn to manage on your own. It's part of growing up." I nodded over the phone, swallowing a sigh. After that call, I started my first shift at the library, beginning a relentless cycle. The library job was early mornings. Evenings were spent bartending at a sports bar near campus. Weekends, I tutored high schoolers over Zoom. Every day was just enough. Sometimes not enough. I vividly recall my sophomore spring. The basement apartment I shared with 3 others started leaking every time it rained. Mold crept into the kitchen corners, its damp smell following me even into sleep. But I didn't dare move because the rent was only $400 a month, the cheapest in Brooklyn. I still see my old broken laptop dying right before finals week. I cried in the school's computer lab, not because of the laptop, but because of the helplessness. I called home. "Mom, I need a new laptop. This one's completely dead." She went quiet. Sam, we really can't right now. Everything's too expensive. Can you borrow one from the library for a few days? I forced a smile and nodded again. Back then, I accepted it as part of growing up. But what sparked my suspicion wasn't my own circumstances, it was the contrast. Ryan, my younger brother, started college a year after me. He lived in a new dorm, had the latest iPhone designer sneakers, and talked about weekend trips with friends. When I asked, he said, I save invest early, and Mom and Dad help out a little. A little. I remember that phrase clearly. I wondered, why didn't I get a little of anything? But I rationalized it. Maybe because I'm the older sibling. Maybe because I chose a more expensive school. Maybe I needed to learn to be tougher. So I stayed silent. But now nothing made sense anymore. For 4 years I accepted financial rejections as hardship. I believed I had to fend for myself because my parents had no other choice. But now, they had $2,000 a month from Grandma. That money was meant for me. Yet I ate instant noodles and walked in the rain because I couldn't afford to fix my car once I got pneumonia. It was December, and I still walked nearly 2 miles to bartend. I couldn't afford an Uber. I couldn't even afford proper doctor visits. I remember lying in bed for a week, feverish coughing, endlessly surviving on Tylenol and instant soup. I texted my mom. She said, "Rest up, you'll get through it." No one asked, "Do you have enough for a doctor?" No one said, "We'll help." Now I see clearly. They couldn't. They wouldn't. That was the deepest pain, being abandoned while someone else was chosen. I don't resent Ryan. I love my brother. But I started to understand that love in a family doesn't always come with fairness. And sometimes love is distributed wrongly. Have you ever felt like you had to carry more than others in your own home with no explanation why? If you have, share in the comments. We need to speak about the things no one wants to hear. I no longer see my parents the same way. Memories took on a different hue. They weren't the people trying their best anymore. They were the ones who chose silence when I was in pain. And I started asking a bigger question. What else do I not know about my family? The answer likely lies in the next chapter, when I decided to seek the truth at all costs. When someone says family is the safest place, I used to believe it like I believed in gravity. But do you know what it feels like when gravity suddenly disappears? Everything in you floats aimless without an anchor. That's how I felt when the truth started spilling out at that dinner table. I stood frozen beside Grandma Mildred while my mother tried to maintain a calm facade. My father stared into his wine glass as if he could drink the situation away. But Grandma's eyes, once warm, turned sharp like shattered glass. "What did you just say, Sam?" she asked again. "You never got any of the money." I repeated slower. "I never received a single cent of the money you mentioned." The air at the table grew thick like the sky before a storm. Everyone was silent. I could hear clinking cutlery from other tables, soft jazz from the speakers. But for me, time stood still. Grandma Mildred turned to my father. "Greg, I sent $2,000 every month starting from August when Sam began college to the joint account you and Janet have. You told me she was using it for school and living expenses. Now Sam says she never saw a dime." I looked at my father, hoping for a reasonable explanation, anything to make this less cruel. He gave an awkward laugh. "There must be a mix-up. Maybe we used it to pay her tuition instead of giving it to her directly." "Pay tuition," I echoed. "I took out $50,000 in loans for school. I worked 3 jobs a week. I called asking for $200 for books, and Mom said there was no money. While you were getting $2,000 a month." I saw my mother's face change. "We're a family, Sam. Grandma's money was to help the whole household." "No." Grandma Mildred cut her off, her voice trembling but firm. I made it very clear. That money was for Sam. I sent it so she wouldn't have to work herself to exhaustion, so she could focus on her studies. I even asked every month, Greg. You emailed me saying she was eating better, sleeping enough, and no longer worried about rent. Emails, I whispered. You even wrote emails lying to her. Ryan suddenly spoke up. "Wait. The $1,000 I get every month, is that from Grandma, too?" Grandma Mildred turned to my brother, surprised. "I didn't send you any money, Ryan. Only the scholarship fund for you after graduation. That hasn't been touched." Ryan frowned, looking at our parents. "Then who's been putting money in my account?" No one answered. I wanted to scream, flip the table cry run. But all I did was stand there, hands clenched, nails digging into my palms. "You took money meant for me, used it. Without telling me, let me live like I was homeless while my brother lived like a prince." Sam's mother started. "No, Mom, don't say anything." My voice was low but sharp as a blade. "Everything you say now feels like a lie." I turned to Grandma. If you don't mind, I need some air. I left the table. The restaurant's air felt suffocating. I heard someone call my name, maybe Ryan, but I didn't look back. Pho. I stood alone outside the restaurant, hands trembling, unsure if from cold or rage. I felt like I'd just escaped a beautiful but deceitful dream. Every memory, every kind word from my parents was cracking into pieces. Every explanation became meaningless. Family decisions, we did what's best for you all, just glossy paint, covering manipulation and selfishness. Have you ever been shocked to realize the people you love aren't who you thought? That the years you struggled were the result of deliberate silence? If so, leave a comment. Your story might help someone feel less alone. I don't know how long I stood there. Night fell on Mercer Street like a thin, quiet curtain, cold and still. But inside me, the storm was just beginning. I needed answers, and this time no one would stop me. In the next chapter, I'll tell you about that sleepless night when I began revisiting my entire past, and for the first time questioned everything I thought was true. Have you ever had a night where you couldn't close your eyes, afraid that what you'd see when you woke up was real? That night, I didn't cry. My tears seemed to have dried up when I left the restaurant. I walked 3 blocks in silence before calling an Uber to my basement apartment. Not because I was stingy with money, but because I couldn't believe I'd lived so miserably while my family thrived on lies. The apartment door closed behind me with its familiar creak. I didn't turn on the light. Everything felt more bearable in the dark, as if not seeing clearly dulled the pane's edges. I lay on the old sofa. The ceiling still had that small crack from last spring's rain. I remembered telling my parents my place was molding and I needed money to move. My mother's response, "Hold out 1 more semester, don't make a big deal." Now I knew they could have helped. They chose not to. I opened my phone. The first message was from Ryan. "Sis, I swear I didn't know. I really thought the money was from school. I'm so sorry." Part of me wanted to believe him. Ryan was always spoiled, yes, but he was never deceitful. The horror in his eyes at dinner was real, but another part of me shook with anger. Why did no one ever ask if I was okay? Why did everyone accept my suffering as a given? The next message was from my mother. "Sam, you know we always wanted the best for you. Everything we did was for you." I scoffed a small sharp sound like metal on glass. "For me," I muttered. "For me, you let me live like a beggar. For me, you took money, meant for me, and bought a Coach bag. If someone's ever told you they did everything for you, but you were the only one hurt in the story, leave a comment. I want to know how many people have been wounded by the excuse of it's for your own good." I pulled an old blanket over me. The night passed like thick dust settling after each denial of truth. I didn't sleep. I just lay there remembering. Every call for help, every rejection. Sophomore winter, when I had to choose between buying textbooks or medicine for a lingering cold, I chose books. Junior summer, when I wanted to intern at a marketing agency in Boston, an unpaid position, but a door to the future. I asked my mom if she could help with housing costs. She said, "No way, honey. We're considering trading in the car." I turned down the opportunity and stayed to work night shifts at a bar. I used to think I was strong. Now I know I was forced to be strong, because no one chose to help when they could have. At nearly 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was Grandma Mildred. I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I should answer. I was afraid she'd cry, afraid she'd be angry at me. But I remembered her eyes when the truth came out. No blame, just pain and regret. I pressed accept. "Sam," her voice was hoarse but alert. "Are you home?" "Yes." "Good. I just want to say, I won't let this end like this." I swallowed hard. "Do you know anything more?" "No, but I know one thing: I trusted the wrong people. And now I'll make it right. Meet me at the old cafe near Washington Square Park tomorrow, 10 a.m. I closed my eyes. "I'll be there." She paused. "Are you okay?" I laughed, my voice dry. "I don't know. That's okay. You don't need to be okay tonight. Just come tomorrow and we'll start again." I hung up, placing the phone on my chest. For the first time that night, I felt a slight calm. She'd called. She still chose to stand by me. In the thick darkness of a night of betrayal, that trust was the only thing still clear. I didn't know what awaited at tomorrow's meeting. I only knew I wouldn't stay silent anymore, and I wouldn't let this pain be buried as if it never existed. We don't have to endure alone. If you've ever kept quiet to avoid hurting someone only to end up hurt the most, share your story. Sometimes one person speaking the truth is enough to change an entire narrative. In the next chapter, I'll tell you about the meeting the next morning, when Grandma Mildred and an unexpected guest began uncovering the truth hidden for 4 years. I arrived at the small cafe on Court Street, a quiet corner of Brooklyn, my mind heavier than the drizzle outside. The place had a vintage vibe, with soft yellow lights and light jazz from an old speaker in the corner. Normally, I'd order a coconut latte and work on marketing plans, but today I was here to face a new chapter, one I hadn't planned for. Grandma Mildred had called last night, brief and firm, tomorrow 9 a.m., hatch and roast. I won't let this end like this. I walked in, and before I could order, I saw her sitting in the corner under a peeling red brick wall. She wasn't alone. Beside her was a woman in a charcoal suit, sharp-eyed but calm. And next to her I recognized Aunt Rachel, my father's sister. The woman the family always called too blunt and hard to live with. Sam Aunt Rachel stood, pulling me into a brief but heartfelt hug. It's finally time for things to come to light. I sat down, still silent. Grandma Mildred slid a brown envelope toward me. These are my bank statements, emails from your parents, and screenshots of every monthly transfer for the past 4 years. I opened it quietly. Page after page showed my parents' account $2,000 deposited every month, starting from August when I began college. Grandma had even clipped emails they sent her. Sam's doing well. She can focus on studies thanks to you. Thank you for helping her not worry about money. I swallowed hard. Those lies I'd never seen, but I'd lived their consequences. And this grandma pointed to the woman in the suit is Vivian Parker. She's a lawyer specializing in financial fraud and elder abuse. Vivian handed me a business card. I'm not here to push you to sue. I'm here to let you know your rights and your grandmother's. I leaned back, still clutching the documents. So, legally speaking, did my parents commit a crime? There are 3 issues, Vivian said clearly. 1, they took money from your grandmother under the pretense of supporting you, but used it for personal purposes. That's financial fraud and breach of trust. 2, they took out a $20,000 loan in your name without consent. That's identity theft, potentially criminal. 3, your grandmother is over 65, so deceiving her into sending money could be considered elder financial abuse. I turned to Grandma Mildred. You trusted them. You sent money thinking I was being helped. Why didn't you ask me directly? Her voice softened, her eyes sad. Because I trusted your parents. They're my children. And I thought asking you would break the family's trust. I was wrong, Sam. I'm sorrier for that mistake than for the money lost. Aunt Rachel spoke up. I suspected something for a while. I kept seeing my brother brag about home renovations, yacht trips to Bermuda. But when I asked, he said it was from investments or big company bonuses. I gave a bitter laugh. While I ate ramen and carried a $50,000 debt, Vivian nodded. You're not the only one this has happened to, but you have a chance to reclaim your dignity even financially if you choose to act. I stared at the documents, everything slowing down. I didn't know whether to cry or scream, walk away, or yell for justice. What happens if I sue? Vivian flipped a page. A civil suit could force them to repay the money, including the loan in your name, plus damages and interest. If criminal, depending on severity, they could face fines or probation. I let out a long breath, not of relief, but of sinking weight. I'm not sure if I'll sue, I said, my voice small, but firm. I don't know if I have the strength for a long legal battle, but I'm certain of one thing: I want the truth. Vivian nodded. That's your first right. We start by clarifying everything. I flipped through fake emails, transfer records lines written about me that I'd never known. Each page was a knife to my memories, but also a mirror reflecting what I'd blinded myself to. Can I keep these copies? You should, Grandma Mildred said, squeezing my hand. Because from today, the truth belongs to you. I held the papers, my hands still trembling slightly. But for the first time since that dinner, I felt I had a choice. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that made your entire past crumble? If you've been in a similar situation, share in the comments. I want to know if I'm alone. I stood up, thanked everyone, and left the cafe. Brooklyn's sky was still gray, but the rain had stopped. Beneath those thick clouds, I knew the sun was still there, and in me a resolve had sparked. I couldn't erase the lost years, but I could choose how to live from now on. Because I knew more than ever, no one had the right to silence me again. I thought long and hard before deciding to return to the house I once called home. That morning, as I gripped the cold iron doorknob, my heart wasn't confused anymore. It was numbly clear. My parents stood waiting on the porch. Their faces held a mix of unease and hope. Maybe they thought I was back to forgive. But no, I was back to hear the truth. Every word, every detail, no omissions. "I want the truth," I said as I crossed the threshold, not giving them time to steer the conversation. From start to finish. No sugarcoating. No more, "we only wanted what's best for you." The living room air was taut as a violin string. My mother swallowed hard. My father stood straighter, as if preparing for a meeting. But I wasn't their subordinate, nor their child in this house anymore. I was someone they'd betrayed. After a silence that felt like centuries, my father began, "When your grandmother said she'd send money, we really meant to give it to you." He avoided my eyes. But then, things got out of hand. I sat across from them. Out of hand how? "You don't know." My mother cut in, her voice trembling. "Your first year of college, your dad lost a big contract. Things got tight. We needed to fix the roof. Ryan was being bullied at school and needed private therapy. We thought we'd just borrow a little. We'd pay it back later." I bit my lip. A little over $100,000 in 4 years is a little. My father quietly pulled a file from a drawer under the table. "This is our record. What we spent it on." I opened it. Europe trip in my sophomore year. Kitchen renovation. Funding Ryan's podcast, Future Speak. Paying off personal credit cards. Dad's birthday VIP baseball tickets. I looked up, disbelieving. Part of my student loan was also taken out in my name. "Only $20,000, my mother whispered. "We thought we'd pay it back soon. The interest rate was low. Your name was easier to get approved." That was the moment my heart sank. Not just the tuition money, not just the lies. They'd borrowed my name, my future, my financial credibility deliberately. "You didn't just take my money," I whispered, voice breaking. "You ruined my financial future." Without a word. Every time I asked for book money, you said no, but you used my name to take out loans. "We're a family, Sam," my father said, his voice growing impatient. "You can't understand the pressure of being a parent." I stood abruptly. "And you can't understand the pressure of surviving semesters on ramen, a broken laptop, a torn jacket, and pneumonia in a freezing basement room." They fell silent. In that moment, I realized they didn't know, didn't want to know, because the truth would force them to face their conscience. I walked to the door. "I'm bringing in a lawyer." My mother lunged forward. "Sam, please don't destroy this family." I turned, my voice cold as steel. "This family was destroyed long ago. I'm only just realizing it." I stepped out, the late afternoon sun stretching along my steps. I no longer felt like the daughter in that family, but an adult claiming the right to tell my own story. If someone you loved betrayed your trust, what did you do? Share your feelings in the comments. Every story deserves to be heard. I don't know what the legal battle ahead will bring, but I know one thing: my silence is over. Have you ever walked into a room and realized everyone there was telling your story without you knowing? Exactly 1 month after signing the agreement at Vivian's law office, I got an email from an NYU student organization. Subject: special invitation, outstanding student exhibition this month. I laughed, thinking it was a mistake. I'd never won prestigious scholarships or joined flashy extracurriculars. For me, college was about working, studying, and surviving week to week. But one line stopped me. "This exhibition is specially curated with someone very close to you." Curiosity brought me back to NYU on a Saturday morning. The familiar red brick gates opened each step down the hallway, pulling me back to the life I'd called the hardest, but the realest. I didn't expect to return like this. The exhibition was in the second-floor multi-purpose room of the main library. The door was open. Inside was quiet, only the soft sound of shoes on wood and eyes following me. In the center of the room was a large sign in bold, elegant letters. The Walk of Resilience. Sam Rivers. I froze, unable to breathe for a second. I looked around. On the walls were photos of me. Me behind the bar counter on a Friday night, smiling, holding a tray of drinks. Me in the school's computer lab, hunched over an old monitor, my green sweater frayed at the shoulders. Me cooking ramen in a cramped kitchen, dim light walls stained with water damage. There were even shots from my apartment's corner. My foldable bed, a bookshelf made of cardboard boxes, a torn poster I kept because it made me feel less alone. Under each photo were tributes from students. Because of Sam, I knew I didn't need to be perfect to be strong. Seeing her excel while working inspired me not to drop out. We need role models without a stage like her. I gripped my bag strap, my eyes stung, and then I saw a glass frame in the exhibition's center holding a handwritten letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. Ryan. Sam. If you're reading this, you probably know this is something I've been quietly preparing. I don't expect my apology to erase what you've been through, but I want you to know I've seen it. I've seen everything you hid behind your smile. I lived in the light built from your darkness. And I'm sorry. I asked Grandma Mildred everything. I reread your old texts, the ones we ignored. I listened to my podcast again and realized nothing is more real than your sacrifice. This exhibition isn't a gift. It's recognition. From me and from those who quietly watched you and kept going. I won't ask, can you forgive me? I'll ask, can I start over? I didn't cry loudly. I just stood there letting tears fall silently. Not tears of anger or pain anymore, but relief. Like someone had placed a brick back into my crumbling foundation. Have you ever been apologized to in a way that didn't need words, just presence, just genuine effort if you have shared that story? Because maybe forgiveness begins in a moment like that. I don't know how much Ryan has changed, but I know he's started. And sometimes starting is all it takes to mend something broken. I turned, looking around the room. I no longer felt like a victim. I was part of something bigger, a living testament to endurance and rebirth. Ryan wasn't there that day. Maybe he knew I needed space to feel this. But next to the letter, I saw another small note. You don't need to forgive. You just need to know from today I'll walk on my own 2 feet. So you can rest. I nodded silently. Yes, Ryan. Walk. And me. For the first time, I'll learn to sit back and stop carrying the weight. Some things don't need to be said, but quietly change everything. And sometimes those small, overlooked things carry the weight of sincere remorse. That day I visited Grandma Mildred as usual. Since the exhibition, our bond had grown stronger. She'd invite me for lunch, we'd talk and tend to the orchids on her porch. Though we never said it, we both knew family, if it can't be rebuilt on trust, can be rebuilt with time and presence. She was brewing tea when she stopped suddenly. Sam, I want to ask you something. I looked at her waiting. Lately, I've noticed small deposits in my savings account. $500 a month, very regular. No clear sender, just listed as, from an old friend. I frowned. Since when? About 6 months ago. Started around my birthday. My heart stirred. Not me. Not Ryan. And I was sure she had no one close enough to do that. Have you traced it, I asked. I'm not tech-savvy, but I had the bank look into it yesterday. She hesitated. They called this morning. The sender is Greg. I stiffened. Greg. My father. He's been sending $500 a month. No notice, no messages. I didn't know whether to be angry or silent. Greg, the man who hurt me so deeply, who watched me struggle without a word, now quietly sending money to Grandma as atonement. A tangle of emotions swirled, doubt, confusion, and a faint, unnamed stirring. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, she continued, but I thought, you deserve to know. I nodded slowly. I need to see him. I went to the old suburban house where my parents still lived since I was in high school. Nothing had changed, neatly trimmed lawn, same license plate number. Only I no longer belonged here. Greg opened the door. His face showed surprise when he saw me. Sam. I didn't greet him. Can I come in? He nodded, avoiding my eyes. We sat across from each other in the living room. Silence stretched. Grandma told me about her account, I began. I know it's you. He sighed, setting down his coffee. I didn't mean for anyone to know. Why? He looked out the window. Because I don't think I deserve credit. I have no excuses for what I did. I stayed silent. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Sam. He continued, his voice slow but sincere. I just hope one day you'll feel less burdened. I swallowed hard. It wasn't a defense, not a ploy. Just words from a broken heart, worn slow, unguarded. Maybe what moved me wasn't the money he sent, but that he asked for nothing in return. No forced forgiveness, no expectation of my return. Just quietly doing the right thing after so many wrongs. I stood. I don't know what I'll think or feel, but today I want to say, I heard you. Greg nodded, his eyes glistening. That's enough. On the drive home, I didn't play music as usual. I let the car hum in silence, my mind circling his last words. I just hope you'll feel less burdened. Have you ever received a wordless apology? A small act that made you see someone differently, if you have shared it. Maybe someone's waiting to know their quiet efforts matter. I haven't fully forgiven my father. I can't not yet. But in me, the thick wall of ice cracked just a little. And sometimes one crack is enough for light to slip through. If you've ever had to shatter everything to start over, you'll know the feeling of stepping into an empty apartment, freeing yet terrifying. No one's there to control you, but no one's there to remind you you're still worthy of love. I moved into a new apartment in early June. A small Brooklyn studio with an east-facing window and a balcony big enough for 2 lavender pots. It's not luxurious, but it's mine. The rent is paid with income from my first job at a nonprofit marketing firm. I still remember holding the contract like someone handed me the key to a door once locked by fear. I also started another journey therapy. Dr. Olivia Cooper, a psychologist with a kind face and an oddly soothing voice, sat with me in silence during our first session. She didn't push. She just said, "We'll untangle each knot at your own pace." I don't know why I cried hearing that. Maybe because for the first time someone didn't demand I be faster, better, more understanding. In the 3rd week of therapy, I talked about anger, about feeling used as a tool for others' dreams, about loving without daring to speak the truth for fear of being left behind. And Dr. Cooper asked one thing. Do you dare love yourself when you're not the strongest person in the room? That question stayed with me all week. Second guess. At the same time, an idea formed. I thought of those sleepless nights, the exhausting days working just to afford tuition and breakfast. I thought of other students silently enduring as I did, and I decided if I survived, the only reason to exist is to lift someone else up too. I started the Phoenix Fund, a small scholarship for first-year students in financial hardship with no family support. The name comes from the phoenix symbol of rebirth. I know it won't help hundreds, but if one student can buy textbooks on time, if one doesn't drop out for lack of a laptop, my past wasn't in vain. With my family, I chose conditional contact. I set clear boundaries. No calls outside necessary occasions. No borrowing my name. No pretending nothing happened. Every talk with my parents feels like walking a tightrope, keeping distance while holding on to the calm I fought so hard for. I call Grandma Mildred weekly. We talk about the weather, her orchids, the books she's reading. And Ryan, he visits regularly. No awkwardness. Just 2 people learning to be siblings again. Once Ryan brought a pie from a bakery he loves near his place and set it on my table. I don't know how to say it. But I guess starting with pie isn't bad. I smiled. For me, that's enough. Sarcastic. One evening, I sat alone on my balcony, the early summer breeze brushing my hair. I opened my therapy journal where I'd written Dr. Cooper's question. Do you dare love yourself when you're not the strongest person in the room? I wrote my answer. Yes, I'm learning to day by day. Have you ever had to learn to love yourself from scratch? Not for achievements, effort, or burdens carried, but for just being you. If you have shared a few lines, your story might be the first light someone sees in their darkness. I closed my eyes. No applause, no rewards. But a peace I'd never had before. I lost years breaking free from others' limits, and now I'm building a new life, slow, intentional, and entirely mine. If someone hurt you so deeply you had to piece yourself back together to keep going, you'll understand forgiveness isn't erasure. It's standing up and drawing boundaries with your own calm. I never thought I'd sit in a family therapy session. Yet here I was, across from my parents, Dr. Olivia Cooper in the middle, the air fragile enough to shatter at a touch. I agreed to 3 sessions, no more. Not to reconcile, I told Dr. Cooper clearly, but to see if I can move forward without losing myself. The first session was suffocatingly tense. My mother started with familiar words. We only did what we thought was best. Every decision came from wanting to protect you. I looked her in the eyes. No, Mom. You did those things to control me. Not for me. For your fears. She looked betrayed. My father stayed silent, hands clasped tightly. Dr. Cooper let the silence linger before stepping in. Sometimes love done wrongly hurts more than no love at all. And sometimes the receiver has the right to redefine what family means. I knew she was right. I also knew my mother wasn't fully ready to accept it. In the second session, Greg spoke more. For the first time, he didn't justify, didn't redirect, just admitted. I failed, he said, voice hoarse. I thought I was the pillar, so I decided for everyone. But I took more from my daughter than I realized. I nodded. Not saying you're right, nor denying, just acknowledging. And sometimes the most necessary part of healing is acknowledging the hurt happened. My mother still resisted, still tried lines like, "But you had chances to speak up. Why didn't you?" And I, no longer blaming myself, replied softly, "Because you were never a safe place for me to speak." I don't expect her to change completely. But after the third session, she sat in silence for a long time, and when it ended, she approached, whispering, "Thank you for not refusing to meet me." I only said, "Thank you for coming." The final session ended quietly. No reconciliatory hugs, no tearful breakthroughs. But one thing was real: the silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It was space for each of us to choose what to fill it with. On the way home, Dr. Cooper asked, "How do you feel?" I didn't answer right away, then said, "I can forgive, but I'll never trust like before." She nodded. Because forgiveness is a choice. Trust is earned. That stayed with me, like a red thread anchoring me to reality, reminding me I don't need to return to the past to live on. Have you ever forgiven someone but couldn't trust them like before? And did you allow yourself that? If you've been there, share your thoughts. You might help someone wrestling with forgiveness feel a little lighter. Boundaries aren't coldness. They're loving yourself enough to not let old wounds hurt you again. 1 year later, I sat in another restaurant, but this time no empty champagne flutes, no fake smiles. No feeling lost among those once called family. The small restaurant on a quiet Williamsburg street glowed with soft yellow light over oak tables, where people spoke just loud enough to be heard, and servers smiled genuinely. I chose this place not for luxury, but because I wanted everyone to feel familiar, like stepping into a kitchen where someone's been waiting for you. A dinner to celebrate my first promotion. I'd officially become the content strategy director at the nonprofit, where I started as an unpaid intern. First job, first apartment, first savings account, and the first time I knew investing wasn't for survival, but for purpose. But what made it special was who sat around the table. They weren't blood, but they were family. Grandma Mildred sat to my right, wearing the emerald silk scarf I gave her for her birthday. Ryan sat beside her telling a story that made my coworker friend chuckle. At the table's head, Dr. Cooper smiled gently as she did in our therapy sessions. 8 people, not a crowd. But each one had seen me at my most vulnerable and stayed. After dessert, Grandma Mildred raised her glass. The table fell silent as if waiting for this. "Sam," she said, her eyes shining with unpretentious pride, "I'm not proud you overcame pain. Anyone can overcome. I'm proud you turned it into light. Not everyone does that." My throat tightened. Not just from emotion, but because in her words I heard validation for all the nights I wondered, does anyone truly see me? I looked around. Ryan touched my shoulder lightly. Dr. Cooper nodded with an encouraging look. A colleague squeezed my hand under the table. And then, like a slow-motion reel, I remembered it all. The cold basement room. The broken laptop that forced me to write essays on my phone. The unanswered texts begging for $100. That graduation dinner when those words shattered everything. And then, the exhibition bearing my name. Ryan's first text starting with sorry. The legal agreement where I reclaimed control. Grandma's call about my father's silent payments. 3 therapy sessions where I set my first boundaries, all like fragments piecing together. Not perfect, but mine. And tonight I didn't need to prove strength. I just needed to be. I stood raising my glass. My eyes fell to my left hand. No ring, no one's hand to hold. But okay. Very okay. "Thank you all," I began. Not for celebrating my promotion, but for being here by my side, not when I was strongest, but when I was most fragile. I paused, taking a deep breath. I used to think I needed a perfect family to feel whole. But now I know. I just need a real life. A place I don't have to pretend. A table where everyone sits because they choose to, not because they have to. Someone cried. Someone clapped. But I didn't need validation anymore. For the first time, I validated myself. Have you ever rebuilt a life after realizing the old one no longer fit chosen? Who walks with you not for blood, but for humanity? If you have, tell me. I believe real lives find each other in the crowd. I sat down, my wineglass clinking against Grandma Mildred's. She looked at me, whispering, "You've rewritten what family means." I smiled, and this time no one gets to edit it. Please. Outside, the city still glowed. But in me, no more forced sparkle, only the warm light of what's real. That night I came home, kicked off my shoes, poured a glass of water, and sat on my balcony as usual. No texts, no overthinking. Just being there. And enough. And if there's one thing I hope readers take away, it's this. You don't need a perfect past for a worthy future. You don't need a perfect family to know you're loved. And you don't need approval to start again. You just need you. Maybe the biggest lesson from this journey isn't how to overcome pain, but how to live with it calmly, kindly, intentionally. My story isn't about triumphant victories, but quiet stand-ups. About truths that hurt, but need to be told. About forgiveness, not forgetting, but choosing not to let wounds control you anymore. I'm not chasing a perfect family anymore. I choose those who stay when I have nothing left to give. I'm learning to love myself unconditionally. And I believe you can too. If this story touched you somewhere, a memory, an unnamed feeling, a part you've hidden, leave a few lines below. I read everything, and I believe every shared story has power. Follow the channel to continue these journeys together where honesty, healing, and freedom are always the destination. Thank you, truly, for staying until now.